Mobilizing Arts, Culture, Heritage to win the race to zero in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Albino Jopella. I work for the Africa World Heritage Fund, and I'm delighted to be co-chairing this event today with Ewan Hilslop. We are both co-chairs of the Climate Heritage Network, and we'll tell you more about this a little bit later. This dialogue will be about showcasing the role of arts, culture, and heritage can play in achieving a zero carbon climate resilience world for Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. I would like to give you short housekeeping rules. First, it would be great if everyone could use the rename function to indicate your full name and affiliation so colleagues can learn more about who is in our culture and climate community. Second, please note that this session is being recorded. So if you do not wish to be recorded, please make sure your video is off. This event is also being broadcast on YouTube and Facebook. So a warm welcome to all of those watching us on those channels around the world. We will also be taking any questions and comments today via Slido. So those are some of the housekeeping. So this event is one of the 3 November dialogues organized this week by the Climate Heritage Network. The other 2 are aimed at Asia Pacific region and Americas. It forms part of the high-level climate champion Race to Zero November dialogues. And as you may know, the dialogues aim to mobilize support for the Race to Zero and its 10 climate action pathways in advance of the 2021 UN Climate Summit Glasgow in Scotland, COP26. This event is part of the resilience pathway. This represents one of the first time that cultural dimensions of climate change will have been formally highlighted in a program like this, and this is actually really a breakthrough moment. We thank the UN high-level champion Nigel Topping and Gonzalo Munoz for their commitment to seeing that the cultural dimension of climate change are not forgotten. This program is also part of the Climate Heritage Week 2020, which runs from the 16th to the 22nd of November. And the Climate Heritage Week is designed to unite all those interested in enhancing the capacity of arts, culture, and heritage sector to help build a climate neutral and resilient world in the times of COVID-19. Please find more on the Climate Heritage Week and events in the website. And the theme of Climate Heritage Week is because climate change is culture, is a culture issue, then culture is a climate change issue. As I've mentioned, the Climate Heritage Network at the beginning was founded in 2019 by organizations around the world committed to enhancing the role of arts, culture, heritage in tackling the climate emergency. So the CHN is open to government agencies, civil societies, business, universities, indigenous people organizations, and many other organizations and entities of civil society. Please join, and for more information, please visit our website, www.climateheritage.org. So today's exciting event will bring together some fantastic speakers from Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, who are all engaged in climate action and building resilience within the arts, culture, and heritage sectors. It will highlight culture-based strategy between cultural actors and stakeholders across the different sectors. It will also explore how to overcome the barriers of the living the 1.5 degree pathway, especially on cities and the built environment. Our arts, culture, and heritage has such an important role to play in the race to net zero. Its direct links to our identity, sense of place, and community means it can be a powerful force for inspiring climate action. It can also bring people together to achieve just transitions towards low carbon, climate resilience future. So net zero is important because it mitigates climate change. And with that, the devastating impact we will see and are already seeing on culture, arts, and heritage. So people-centered, culture-based climate action has the ability to deliver just, fair, creative, durable, and resilient outcomes. And we will hear about some of those today. So today we are also delighted to be launching the Climate Vulnerability Index, or CVI, project for cultural heritage in Africa at this event. As Mercy Bongela, the site manager at the ruins of Kilwa Kiswani and Songom Nara, which is a World Heritage Site in Tanzania, will be saying a few words about this later. So please join us also tomorrow for the Africa and the Middle East Regional Climate Heritage Forum for more information on this project. So to start this event, we are delighted to introduce Dr. Fikile Vilakazi. Fikile, also known as Gogo Solomon Shabangu, has more than 20 years of work experience, and she is an indigenous knowledge healer and activist from South Africa, and considers herself a child of Mother Nature. She has been working in the field of youth, women, gender, entrepreneurship, development, healing, social justice, sexuality, different institutions and organizations all those years. Her areas of focus include training, public education, advocacy, traditional and energy healing. Gogo Shabangu has a PhD degree in gender studies, and she's also a spoken word artist and traditional singer and praiser. She has also founded various organizations, collective coalition, and seated various boards nationally and internationally. She has also worked in the field of political science at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. So I have a great pleasure to welcome Fikile to deliver the cultural performance to open the event. Over to you, Fikile.
Thank you very much for welcoming me to this space. I'm very grateful to join today from South Africa. I'm going to do an intro piece that is a praise and a jubilation of Mother Earth. I need to explain it because it's going to be in isiZulu. Just quickly, this is a praise and relation to Mother Earth and all her beauty, and I'm performing it through drum as a drumming ritual, really, that praises Uzanemvula. Uzanemvula, when you hear the word Zanemvula in the intro, it's really about the one who brings rain. Unulwandle, the one who belongs to the seas and the oceans. Unkanyezi, the star that brightens the skies, that give us light at night. And Unyanga, which is the moon, which lightens the skies for us at night. Umatafeni as well, the one who belongs to the wild and in nature, for giving us food and medicines for our healing on a daily basis. And the praise and this jubilation is a traditional ritual, a cultural ritual of appreciation of how Mother Earth and all of them continue to take care of us, regardless of all the strain and the violences that they go through due to environmental injustices of our time. So this praise and the jubilation appreciates the resilience of Mother Earth and all her beauty and generosity. It is done in isiZulu, as I've indicated. I'm explaining this, and it's one of our indigenous languages that is spoken largely in South Africa.
Thank you so much, Gogo Shabango, as we say in your language, Siyabonga Kakulu. That was Dr. Fikile Vilikazi in her praise and ululation of Mother Earth and her beauty. I'm told that we had a small technical problem at the beginning, so for those joining us now, I would like to welcome everyone to our event today on culture and resilience, mobilizing arts, culture, and heritage to win the race to zero in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. So thank you so much for joining us. My name is Albino Ajapela. I work for the Africa World Heritage Fund, and I'm delighted to be co-chairing this event today with Iwan Hislop, and we both of us are the co-chairs in the Climate Heritage Network. So this dialogue will be about showcasing the roles of arts, culture, and heritage can play in achieving a zero carbon climate resilience world for Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. So this is one of the 3 November dialogue organized this week by the Climate Heritage Network. The other 2 are aimed at Asia Pacific region and Americas. It formed part of the high-level Climate Champion Race to Zero November dialogues, aiming at mobilizing support for the Race to Zero and its 10 climate action pathways in advance of the 2021 UN Climate Summit in Glasgow, Scotland, COP26. So this event is part of the resilience pathway, and this represents one of the first time that cultural dimensions of climate change will have been formally highlighted in a program like this, and is indeed a breakthrough moment. So for that, we would like to thank the UN high-level champion Nigel Toppings and Gonzalo Menez for their commitment to seeing that the culture dimension of climate are not forgotten. This program is also part of the Climate Heritage Week 2020, which runs all over this week, and is designed to unite all those interested in enhancing the capacity of art, culture, and heritage sector to help build cultural neutral and resilient world in times of COVID. So please find out more on the website. As I refer to the Climate Heritage Network, CHN, was founded last year by organizations around the world committed to enhancing the role of arts, culture, and heritage in tackling climate emergency. And the network is open to government agencies, civil society, business, universities, indigenous peoples, organizations, and many others in civil society. So please join us through our website, www.climateheritage.org. So I think that this is one of the, just a brief for colleagues who might have missed the initial minutes in the introduction. So with these remarks, I would like now to let you know how you can actually get more involved with this event. And for that, I will pass over to my colleague, Katie, who will take you through it. Katie, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name's Katie. I'm from Historic Environment Scotland. I'm just going to quickly talk you through how you can participate in today's event. It's really very, very easy. So if you're viewing it through our microsite, you should be able to see an app on the right-hand side where you can submit your questions. This is powered through Slido today, and we're going to be running some polls using this app as well. If you can't see that app on the right-hand side of your screen, if you just go to www.slido.com, you can also join us that way on your phone or on your computer with the hashtag ICOMOS as the code when you're joining. So we're going to very quickly kind of test out how many people are using it today. So we're going to run our first poll straight away. So if you can see the app on the right hand side, and I should just activate it. You should be able to see that coming up just now. And we're asking all of our wonderful participants to have a little think about how you think that arts, culture and heritage can support the race to zero. And if you're able to, using one word or phrase, describe how that might happen, if you can submit that into the poll. And we're going to create a little word cloud to find out what everybody's thinking. Thinking about the race to zero, this is all about reducing the planet's greenhouse gas emissions down to zero by 2050, but whilst at the same time adapting to climate change impacts to people and ecosystems as well. So we'll give that a few minutes. We've got 8 people who have participated already, which is fantastic. And we might be able to see some of the answers coming through already, which is great. We'll just give it a few more minutes. Brilliant. Some amazing things coming through there. Thank you so much for your submissions. So we'll just leave that open for a moment or so, but as you can answer. And when I'm now going to hand back to the chair, the co-chair, Ewan Hislop, and we'll get back onto the event. Just to let you know, you can also use Slido to ask questions throughout the next session as well, if you have any questions for the speakers. But over to you, and thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? My name is Ewan Hislop, and it's my great pleasure to be co-chairing this event with my fellow Climate Heritage Network co-chair, Albino Japella. Thank you, Katie, for the Slido poll. It's fantastic to see so many people engaging immediately. So we hope to continue that engagement through the event. So please keep contributing. We'd love to hear from you. It's my pleasure to introduce our opening keynote from Her Royal Highness Princess Dana Firas of Jordan. Princess Dana is a global advocate for cultural protection and preservation as a foundation for sustainable development, responsible tourism, political identity and peace. And in 2017, she was designated a UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador. Her Royal Highness is also President of the Petra National Trust, who are one of the founding members of the Climate Heritage Network. And we're very grateful for the support that she has shown for the network since we were founded just over a year ago. Your Royal Highness, we're delighted that you can join us today and you're very welcome to be with us. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Big thank you to our chairs, Dr. Ewan Hislop and Dr. Albino Japella. And it really gives me great pleasure to be with you all today. Here in the Middle East, in my part of the world, despite all evidence to the contrary, I find myself astonished again and again when I hear many say that culture and heritage are a luxury. They're not a priority, but climate action can come later, that we have to focus on more pressing issues, that, you know, scribbles, dusty stones, a few lizards are not as important as people, and that it was the rich Western countries that caused this mess. So why should we clean it up? We just can't afford it. And one thing is absolutely true. We can't afford it. This is the time for action, and we can't afford to fail. Our collective goal to ensure our health and well-being, all of us, is to win the race to zero everywhere. To do this, we need culture, heritage, and the arts. This is why these dialogues represent a breakthrough. For the first time, the cultural dimension of climate change is highlighted formally at the COP, the COP, considering that the first COP meeting took place in 1995. I would say it is high time. So thank you. Thank you to our chairs, thank you to the Climate Heritage Network, and thank you to everyone who has shown such leadership in putting this issue on the table. We have an old saying in Jordan, Aylul Dhanabu Mablul, meaning that the first rains that follow the dry summer months arrive at the end of September. The olive harvest, which provides the livelihood for many farmers and small landowners, depends on those rains. The olive tree is an integral component of the economy and natural heritage of Jordan, covering 77% of all tree-planted areas and 24% of total cultivated land. It is considered the most important tree in the country. It provides fruit and oil for food. The byproduct of the pressing process is used for fuel. The tree's oil and leaves are used for medicine, and its wood, even after it has come to the end of its long life, for fuel. It features prominently in local stories and legends, and even in art and music. And the tree represents so much more in our national narrative. It stands as a physical reminder of resilience, perseverance, and the attachment to the land. And for generations, the olive harvest has played an important role in our cultural, ecological, and economic life. It continues to bring families and communities together in an annual ritual that provides the communal space to share stories, pass down skills and knowledge, and renew the connection to nature. This year, September was dry, October was dry, most of November was dry. And only in the past week did we finally receive a couple of rainy days. The harvest was late and poor. In a year when people are facing mounting challenges due to COVID-19 and its debilitating economic and social consequences, the late rains hit especially hard. When the olive season repeatedly fails to provide viable sustenance, often the trees are cut down and the land is sold to developers. The impact of climate change affect those most vulnerable and their culture and heritage. It erodes their way of life, social cohesion, sense of place, and the inherent knowledge that they have accumulated over generations. This knowledge, the reservoir of experience and adaptation techniques, and the indigenous connections to the Earth's natural systems are all key to communities' survival, resilience, and ongoing ability to adapt. It provides information and age-old skills that can guide our response to climate change issues, protection mechanisms, and mitigation. We can all agree that if we are to hold global warming to below 1.5 degrees, urgent, rapid, and far-reaching change is required. It's a pity that it took a devastating pandemic to show that if we are determined, change is possible. But it also showed us that change is difficult, disruptive, and often unfair, leaving lower income countries and communities marginalized in the process. Culture-based climate action engages local communities to unleash their creativity in the co-production of solutions. It helps determine what the local priorities are by listening to people and appreciating what they value. Then, building the policies and adjustment measures that are needed to deal with change, to adapt, and to guide response. Rooting resilience measures in the culture, heritage, traditions, and knowledge of local communities inevitably brings more durable outcomes. Our ability to be resilient in the face of climate change and the efforts required to address it depends largely on our capacity as societies to absorb the stresses and continue to maintain our livelihoods and well-being, and in response, to adapt and evolve and find creative solutions that build a stronger, more sustainable, and more responsive system. Cultural heritage offers immense potential to drive climate action, bolster communities on the front lines of climate change, provide relevant, workable, and efficient strategies to support a more just transition towards low carbon, climate resilient development. As the work of the Climate Heritage Network has shown, cultural heritage stands for reuse, for stewardship, for planning, and a multi-generational time horizon, for respect for our planetary boundaries, and for an equitable, people-centered approach. We will win the race to zero with determined global action that recognizes the symbiosis between culture, heritage, and the arts on one hand, and climate change on the other. Eventually, we will stand in triumph over the lack of political will, half-hearted measures, and science deniers. We simply can't afford not to, much like the olive tree. It persists through neglect and droughts and remains alive in the face of the toughest of circumstances, only to grow stronger and more bountiful when water and nurture return. My deepest thanks to the UN high-level climate champions, Nigel Topping and Gonzalo Muniz, who have organized the Race to Zero November dialogues and showed true leadership and vision in including the cultural dimension of climate change. And I am immensely proud to work with the Climate Heritage Network and its inspiring coordinator and friend, Andrew Potts. It is incredible that since its launch over a year ago in Edinburgh, CHN has grown to a global membership of over 200 cultural institutions. And last but not least, I am grateful to CHN's co-chairs and this event's chairs, Dr. Albino Drapella, African World Heritage Fund, and Dr. Ewan Hislop of the Historic Environment Scotland for the invitation to participate today and for enabling us to really put forward this incredible interconnectedness between culture and climate to make an impact on the global process, official process, and the decision-making process. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you very much to Her Royal Highness Princess Dana Fires of Jordan. That leads us so perfectly into our first session of today. We will be hearing from 3 speakers ranging from a wide range of arts, culture, and heritage strategies for achieving resiliency and for driving decarbonisation. The session now will provide a balance between how heritage is impacted by climate change and how we can take positive action. It will explore the role of culture, arts, and heritage in building resilience and supporting a path to net zero via strategies such as decarbonisation and facilitating sustainable living. If you have any questions for our speakers during their talks, please use Slido to submit those as we're going, and we'll try and make some time at the end to address your questions, and I'll ask the speakers directly, as many as we can in the time allowed. So please, can I introduce our first speaker, Mercy Mogela, who is the site manager at the ruins of Kilwa Kiwisani of Songa and the ruins of Songa Manara World Heritage Sites from Tanzania. Mercy, welcome to our event.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mercy. I'm a site manager at the ruins of Kilwa Kisiwani and the ruins of Songo Mnara World Heritage Site. I want to talk about climate change, the cause, and how climate change impacted the monuments, and what actions we took so as to rescue the monuments which located along the ocean, and other mitigation measures and further actions we took so as to rescue this historical building for today, for the benefit of today, and for the future benefits. I can't see my slide, but I will try to explain as much as I can. Kilwa Ruins is an archaeological site and a historical site of 9th up to 19th century. It is located south coast of Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, almost 300 kilometers from Dar es Salaam to Kilwa. The site itself, it inscribed in a World Heritage listing in 1981 for the category 3, criteria 3 of UNESCO. And you can look for the map in my slide where you can find a Tanzanian map, and beside you can find the small one which shows the location of Kilwa Kisiwani to the where it's found in Tanzania. The Kilwa ruins is affected much with climate changes. Most factors which cause this, including wind, wave action, and sometimes high tides, as this wave action is impacted the monuments directly, because most of the monuments are located close to the ocean. Like Geleza Fort, Portuguese Fort, also Husuni Kubwa Palace, Makutani Palace, and many other monuments in Kilwa Ruins is located along the ocean. So these monuments mostly impacted by climate action, because the wave action is going directly to the monuments, especially to the monuments which located along the ocean, and the monuments which where the mangrove trees, you cannot find the mangrove trees. So it is easy for the wave action to go directly to the monuments. And most of this monument, the challenge, these monuments, some parts of the walls are eroded, because the wave action going direct and eroded some parts of the monuments. But due to this challenge, we took some mitigation measures so as to rescue these monuments. As we have tried to construct the gabion wall along the Portuguese fort, so as to stop the wave action and water to go directly to the ruins, to erode the ruins. But also we have planted mangrove trees. You can look for the some pictures in my slides where you can find the monuments and mangrove trees along close to the monuments. So we planted the mangrove trees so as to stop or to reduce the water from the ocean to go directly to the ruins. And but this is one of the action we took. Although more action needed, you can look for these pictures. You can find some part of the in the staircase which eroded due to wave action. And the other mitigation measures for that pictures, we are working closely with the UNESCO, and many thanks to UNESCO, because they funded us some money to rehabilitate that stairs, but also to plant more mangrove trees so as to reduce the speed of wave action. This is a work where we are going to do now as we get a fund from UNESCO. But also, I have said that we are working close with UNESCO and we get funding, but also we are working closely with e-commerce, SIAC, and climate action, climate heritage team, the team which pioneered by Andrew Port. All this as measures we took so as to rescue these historical monuments. As last year's 2018, we do some assessment in Kilwa Ruins to see how these monuments are impacted with climate change, and how to communicate or collaborate with the different stakeholders so as to rescue these monuments. And the work we did with the e-commerce, SIAC, and reports is much appreciated, because I can say that because of them also, that's why today we get a fund from UNESCO, because it's like we transfer, we facilitate, it's like we share these issues is a big challenge in Kilwa. We share with the different people everywhere, so everyone understands that in Kilwa ruins, this is a big challenge. And also, we are working close with CVI projects. And this today we launch CVI projects where you can find another slide. Please, Katie, another slide. Another slide, Katie.
Back to the CVI slide, please. That's it. That's
Yes.
it, Mercy.
Yes, we are today for this event we launch CVI project where this is an assessment tool, and I'm sure for this project we will find more ideas, and we will share experience with different peoples on how to rescue the monuments, because CVI with the CVI project also we will get a workshop in Tanzania, but also in Sukuru, Nigeria, the second workshop. But for Tanzania, we will benefit for that workshop, because we will meet different people who well in climatic action, climate. So we will share ideas and experience on how to rescue the monuments. So for CVI Africa project, I appreciate the project that will help us as a site manager, will help us Tanzania to get more knowledge as we will involve also local people in the workshop. So we will share different ideas on how to rescue the monuments which affected or impacted with the climate heritage. So for the action we took, like construction of gabion wall, but also plantation of mangrove, but also further action we took as we are going to rehabilitate the monuments which impacted with the climate change, but also we are going to plant more mangrove trees with the UNESCO fund so as to rescue these monuments. But furthermore, we continue to collaborate with the climate heritage team, e-commerce, also CVI project, so as to make sure that these monuments continue to be protected, conserved for today and for future generation. I think for today is enough. Then thank you for your attention. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mercy, for that fantastic talk, and be reassured we could see your slides perfectly. Congratulations for your outstanding and inspiring work, Mercy. Just demonstrating, I think, one thing, particularly the value of collaboration to address these challenges that so many of us are facing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ewan.
May I now introduce our next speaker, Elodie Hebert, who is the technical manager of CRIBA, which is the Center for the Responsible Retrofit of Heritage Buildings in France. Elodie is a building physics engineer, and she specializes in energy retrofit of heritage buildings and in the moisture transfer through traditional structures. So today she's going to talk to us about her work in energy retrofit of heritage buildings. So Elodie, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you for the introduction, Ivan, and hello to everyone. So to begin, I will start with a definition. When I'm talking about heritage buildings, I'm talking about buildings that were built before World War II with traditional techniques and materials. That is to say that heritage buildings are can be listed buildings like Versailles in France, but also very common buildings that you can find in villages. So in France, and I think it's the same in Europe, heritage buildings represent a third of the existing stock of building, and in France it represents 10 millions of buildings. And the question we want to answer with our center is how to conciliate heritage conservation and the energy retrofit of these heritage buildings. Indeed, in France, we have an act that sets that in 2050, all buildings will have to be retrofitted to a low energy level. So this is, of course, a good thing, and it is necessary if we want to slow down climate change. But it puts a very, very big pressure on heritage buildings on two different aspects. The first is the heritage conservation, and another aspect is moisture damages. First, about heritage conservation. Here I have an example. That's a very humble building that you can find in my region, Alsace, near Germany. But even if it's an humble building, you can see that there are nice details and features. So for example, you have decorated corners, you have wooden shutters, wooden partitioned windows. You also have wooden window frames and traditional tiles. And what happened is that this building was retrofitted, but not in a good way. So it was retrofitted with exterior insulation, and it lost every nice details and features that I explained. And that's a shame, because especially in France, that kind of heritage buildings and the atmosphere that it gives in our village is of course a source of pride for us, and it's also a source of money via tourism. I don't think tourists will be delighted to see how these buildings could be bad retrofitting. Another aspect is the damages that a bad retrofit can do to heritage buildings. Here you have an example of a timber framed wall. It was insulated from the inside with polystyrene, and it was rendered with cement render on the outside. And these materials are not adapted to heritage buildings because they concentrate the moisture within the wall. And in a timber frame wall, this is of course a problem, because moisture plus wood, it leads to mold growth, and you can see that all the parts, some parts of the timber frame, wooden timber frame, turned into powder, and this is of course a problem, even a problem of structure, and it engenders the viability of the building. So you understood that to conciliate heritage conservation and energy efficiency, you have of course to take care about energy efficiency, heritage conservation, and also you have to prevent moisture disorders. And that's why we decided to create CREBA. So CREBA is the Center for Responsible Retrofit of Heritage Buildings. So we are 5 founding partners. CEREMA, in which I work. At CEREMA, we are the engineering office of the French Ministry of Sustainable Development. We had also 2 schools that are our partners, an engineering school and an architect school, and 2 heritage preservation associations. And what is CREBA? CREBA is basically a website that you can find on www.creba.fr. Unfortunately, not much is translated into English, but we still have nice pictures that you can go and see. And in CREBA, you have 3 different sections. First, case studies section, then a documentation section, and then a decision-making tools section. This website is we wanted to create this website for project owners, for architects, engineers, and also craftspeople who wants to know more about the energy retrofit of heritage buildings, and who wants to do it the right way, because you see that in many cases it's not done in a good way. So first, in our case studies section, you will find examples of good practices, because there are still skeptics in France about how is it possible to retrofit heritage buildings. And with this section, we want to show that it is possible to retrofit these buildings to very to low energy buildings, and also to very low and sometimes even zero energy buildings. So we have for the moment 10 buildings that are located all over France. We have different types of buildings, schools, social housings, detached houses, etc. And we have, of course, many different materials, timber framed, brick, cut stone, and rumbled stone, and so on. In our documentation section, you will find everything that has been published in France for 15 years about the energy retrofit of heritage buildings, and that includes research works, but also more general documentation that from public authorities like cities or regions. And for the moment, we have more than 70 documents available, and we are still adding documents in this section. And finally, on the website, we propose tools for decision makers who wants to know how to concretely do a responsible retrofit of their building. And to this end, we've produced a charter because we wanted to explain what we are thinking when we are talking about responsible retrofit. And in this charter, we also detail what to do about walls, windows, roofs, to raise their energy efficiency, and while preserving their heritage values and avoiding moisture damages. So you can see that it was translated in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So you are free to download the charter on our website. Another tool that we developed or we adapted is the guidance wheel. So the guidance wheel was created by our English counterpart, the STBA, Sustainable Traditional Building Alliance. And it is a tool that helps project owners to simulate their works and to see before doing them if they are appropriate. Of course, if they are appropriate about energy, heritage, and moisture. And to promote CREBA, we also built a community around it. And for example, we organized annual conferences. I had a video. I don't know if it works. Okay. So we had last year in Strasbourg 150 people who were present, and it was kind of a success. We have also regional clubs in 3 cities, in Strasbourg, in Bordeaux, and in Toulouse, in which we discuss with local architects or engineers or even officials about the retrofit of heritage buildings, and we are sharing our point of view. And we have also we are also active on the social networks, and especially on LinkedIn. So, so to conclude, we are proud to say that we are funded by both the French Ministry of Sustainable Development and the Ministry of Culture. But there is still a lot of work to do to convince people and to educate them about the responsible retrofit of heritage buildings. And CREBA is our small contribution to this topic. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Elodie. Your work is very important, and it demonstrates the contribution that heritage buildings can make to greenhouse gas reductions. And I'm aware that similar work is going on all over the world. So thank you very much for that. Your key message: responsible retrofit, good practice, and it's about the art of the possible. So thank you for that. We're running a little bit behind in our schedule. So what I'm going to do is just jump ahead slightly in the program because I'd like to welcome our second keynote speaker of today. That is Nigel Topping, who we're delighted to have with us. Nigel is the UK's high-level climate action champion, appointed by the UK Prime Minister in January 2020. Nigel works alongside the Chilean high-level climate action champion, Gonzalo Munoz. And the role of the high-level champions is to strengthen collaboration, drive action from across business, investors, organizations, cities and regions, etc., on climate change, and to coordinate this work with governments and parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNCCC. Nigel has previously worked in business, seeking to accelerate the transition to a low-carbon economy. And we are very grateful for Nigel being with us today. I know you have to rush off at about 8:20, Nigel, so bringing you forward now, and very glad to have you with us today. So over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ewan and Albino. You know you've got a problem when someone has to use the word etc. in describing your job title. So, as you say, the role of high-level champion was created in Paris to work with everybody who's not a national government. And Gonzalo and I are really committed to working with those of you working in the cultural and heritage domain, because we think it's so important. And Amilcar, I'm really sorry I'm going to miss your presentation. I had 2 glorious years of my young life living in Barcelona and enchanted by Parque and Sagrada Familia and La Pedrera. So I'm sorry I'm going to miss you, but I'm really pleased you're here. I want to thank the Climate Heritage Network. you know, Albino and Ewan for convening the conversation, for working with us to make sure we've got the voice of the cultural and heritage sectors in these dialogues. Most people focus on the words race and zero in these dialogues because it is urgent, and we do have to get to zero on the way to a regenerative economy. But we think the word dialogues perhaps the most important, because we will not get to zero in a fast way unless we really draw on the best ideas from all parts of society. So I'm really excited to that you're really leaning in, and I'm learning a lot from all these. I was just reflecting on the, you know, people often say that climate change is a collective action problem. I don't want to blame you guys, but I think you could say that climate change is a cultural crisis that's a result of a failure of memory, imagination, and power structures. And that really it will take the very best of our arts and culture and heritage community to address those failures. Let me just unpack them a bit. Memory, I think it goes without saying that the crucial role, and the work that we've heard about from Mercy and Elodie, and that we're going to hear about from Amilcar, of retaining our cultural memory in place and in artifacts with which our identity is so tied up, which can also remind us of the fragility of cultures and prevent us from being complacent in the face of such a crisis as climate change. It can also, and we had a wonderful example from Gogo Shabongo, keep the traditional knowledge alive, from which will be such a rich source of solutions going forward. I'm also a big fan of, I mean, my wife's a poet, so but I'm a big fan of the arts, of reminding us both of that in many ways we've been here before. One of my favorite poems is Thalassa by the Irish poet Lewis MacNeice. I'll just read you the last verse of this poem, because it's for me, it's a source of hope. He says, "Put out to sea, ignoble comrades, whose record shall be noble yet. Butting through scarps of moving marble, the narwhal dares us to be free. By a high star our course is set. Our end is life, put out to sea." For me, it's a wonderful evocation of the need for us to get up, dust ourselves off, and keep looking forward, keep setting out to sea with a goal set on a high star, as he described it. Also to take inspiration from nature. I love that line, "The narwhal dares us to be free." Of course, culture is also reminds us of history, as Satayana, George Santayana says, those who forget history are condemned to repeat it. So I think the role of the culture, the arts and heritage in keeping memory alive, which is such a rich source of knowledge, is crucial. And sometimes the race to the future, or this sort of fetish for progress, leaves all that behind as though and devalues all of that knowledge. So it's so crucial that we keep that memory alive. I think also it's clear that a climate crisis is to a certain extent a failure of imagination. And here, I think it's great to see the arts, I think, engaging much more now in the last couple of years than they have for a while in reimagining our future. I'm a big fan of what some people call speculative fiction. Kim Stanley Robinson's recently written a book called Ministry for the Future. And sometimes it's describing the kind of breakdown in the international processes and the creation of a new ministry. So it's a reimagining of the near future, and it's something that's been real inspiration for me in taking on this role, to be bolder and to reimagine what I might be able to do and Gonzalo might be able to do in this role. So even engaging with you is a part of a reimagining our role. I think finally this issue of power structures and asymmetric power structures, I think culture and the arts have such a huge role. You think historically of the role of the jester in the court, making fun of the king or queen, pointing out their weaknesses and their humanity. Or when I lived in Cologne for a while, the carnival, that complete inversion of society where the keys to the city are handed to the carnival fool. And latest example of sort of irreverence or truth to power, the Amitav Ghosh, the Nobel Prize winning writer. He's written a book called The Great Derangement, and in which, you know, so lest I and Gonzalo start taking ourselves too seriously, he reminds us that of the in some ways the absurdity of our own role, right? Which we do take very seriously, but it's good to be kept grounded. He says, he's talking about the Paris Agreement. In clause after clause, the agreement summons up mysterious structures, mechanism, and strange new avatars of officialdom. So that's me and Gonzalo, new avatars of officialdom. As, for example, when it decides that 2 high-level champions shall be appointed and invites all interested parties to support the work of the champions. And then he muses, where one wonders is the Colosseum in which these champions have dueled their way to the highest level. So I apologize for not having dueled my way to the highest level of champion in any Colosseum, but we take the role very seriously whilst remembering that it is an artificial construct, and we'll do whatever we can. So to finish, I'd just like to say I'm so grateful for all of you for mobilizing arts, culture, and heritage, for mobilizing the crucial knowledge that is embedded in our historical artifacts and culture, that is embedded in indigenous peoples' knowledge. I firmly believe that now's the time for culture everywhere to be really fully incorporated into climate action, to be a voice at the table, to be part of the conversation. And Gonzalo and I are really committed to incorporating those voices in the Race for Resilience campaign, which will be launching soon. We're also looking at launching a climate imagination project to harness the best of speculative fiction and other ideas in the pipeline, and open to any ideas, and Andrew and everybody that you have. So if you'll excuse the cultural pun, the time to act is now. I'd like to thank you for everything you're doing in leaning into this crisis of memory, imagination, and power structures, to which the arts, culture, and heritage have so much to offer. Thank you.
Nigel, thank you so much for those words. And I think that was quite inspirational, and just to hear your language and the way you view the role of culture, arts, culture, and heritage in dealing with the climate crisis is really important for us. And in the Climate Heritage Network, one of our standard phrases is climate change is a culture issue and culture is a climate change issue. And the balance between fragility and resilience, I think, is really crucial for us in bringing culture to the fore to resolve some of the issues that face us globally. So thank you very much for those words, and we really appreciate you being with us today, and look forward to engaging with you from now towards the COP. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ewan, and apologies, I have to leave now, and good luck for the rest of the session. Thanks, everyone.
So we'll move on to the third of our speakers, and I'd like to welcome Almacar Vargas. Almacar is a specialist in World Heritage Management and has worked in institutions as far afield as UNESCO in Paris, the National Institute of Anthropology in Mexico City, but in 2012 he moved to Barcelona, where he now works at the Casa Batlló to raise awareness and to share and unharness the potential opportunities of that particular World Heritage Site. So he's going to speak to us about that subject today. Almacar, over to you.
Thank you very much to all the organizers and all the participants, and thank you for thinking on Casa Batlló and what we're doing for tackling climate change and engage people with heritage issues. For us, it is an honor and a pleasure and a compromise also to share with you and all the audience what we are doing for climate change and for sustainability, which is something that, believe it or not, Antoni Gaudí, who built this house in 1906, he was very aware of that. So I will start my presentation. I know we're running on time, and I'm just checking that I won't pass any further minute. Well, I will explain you that Casa Batlló is a sustainably born house. Actually, it's very interesting to see the previous presentation that there is a program in France for reusing buildings. So Antoni Gaudí reused a former building, and he built a building just embedded in the previous one. I will explain that later. And then I will show you some examples of what is our engagement on climate change, and just a last example of how we have been tackling climate change during the lockdown with an initiative that aimed to engage people to celebrate an intangible heritage tradition in Barcelona and in Catalonia, which is St. George's Day, but doing it at their homes in a sustainable way that is reducing waste, etc., etc. Well, Casa Batlló was inscribed in the World Heritage List in 2005 based on 3 criteria of outstanding universal value. Antoni Gaudí built this house between 1904 and 1906, and he did it so fast because he reused a former building. So it was an 1877 building, so like it was like 30 years old, that building. So he convinced the owners of the house of do not demolish the building and reuse it for building this new house. The family Batlló, who were the owners of the building, he accepted, he agreed, and Antoni Gaudí did an outstanding change of the house and making it more sustainable, and until now, surprisingly, update to the current times. Now it's a private house, but it has been always a private house since the 19th century. And now it's owned by another family from Barcelona. So their local community are the owners. This is the location of the house. We are just next to the Mediterranean, and you can see at the bottom left of the diapositive, there is an urban area. So we have there's a lack of green areas in Barcelona. So we are in the middle of a completely urban area. And this is the map of the protected area. This is in the red zone, very close to the center of the city of Barcelona. As I mentioned, it was a sustainable born house. This is one detail of the facade. We can see that all these colorful tiles that we see in the picture, there are not all tiles. Most of them are broken glasses that Antoni Gaudí reused for having this amazing facade. So he technically used garbage for doing this facade, and he did it in an outstanding way. Has been like that since more than 100 years ago. And from the former building, we can recognize slightly these squared rectangular green windows that we can see at the facade. So in the interiors, he also created a dome in the center of the middle yard, and he changed the color of the tiles, having more white, more white or navy or light blue at the bottom and dark blue at the top, just to balance the amount of light that the bottom, that the lowest levels of the house will receive more light, and the top, those closer to the dome, would not have so much light. So he was also managing this light. This is another detail of the facade. These are the windows of the former building, and he reused them, and he added these balconies made of iron and all these glasses, and the circle ones are made of ceramics. The rest are recycled, reused glasses from different colors. And this is the rez-de-chaussée, the ground floor and the principal floor, and he also reused the house. And he opened this large, very, very large window. If we can see at the right, this is another neighbor building who has a traditional window. So you can see that Antoni Gaudí let the light go inside, and he also created a ventilation and circulation of air system, very easy to regulate. So in 2020, we started some years ago actually. One of our cultural visits is using this mobile device, which reduces the use of printed materials. So we, since 2013, when we started using this device, people, they didn't have handouts. So we used to have 1 million people visitors. So if all of them, we should get them a paper or a map in very fancy, colorful material, we would spend 1 million paper, and I don't know how many ink and printing and transporting, etc. So these devices are reusable. Nowadays, we are cleaning them with another modern system just to avoid this contact that, things that are touching are not a healthy thing now. We use ultraviolet light just to disinfect these devices. But this is a way to reduce waste and to reduce printing materials. And also inside, during the visit, the people, they don't see cartels, they don't see too many cartels or signals, printed signals. So we have a very, very low production of paper and that kind of materials that we use in the museums. In 2015, as all you know, the General Assembly of State Parties of the World Heritage Convention, they adopted the policy document for the integration of a sustainable development perspective in the World Heritage Convention. These documents are available online. And based on that, last year, there was a synergy between the City Council of Barcelona. They launched a campaign for engaging cultural activities and tourism enterprises, as we are, to obtain what is called the Tourism Biosphere Distinction. This this distinction worked in 7 components of the sustainability. And the component number 3 is a group of activities and actions and goals that we had to achieve based on the efficient use of resources, environmental protection, and climate change. So we included in this opportunity the support of a consultancy to tackle and to do actions, feasible actions, just to tackle climate change. We developed this list of actions between October and November. We knew and we found that we were implementing these sustainable actions against climate change actions since several years ago, as I mentioned before. And in December, we obtained the biosphere distinction. And during the 2020, we just had to follow up the actions for improvement for this year. Of course, COVID-19 changed the action. So we were locked down. We were closed for several months. Now we are closed again, but for different reasons. We have to reevaluate and reassess what are the new actions. Some of them completely stopped. So the actions were internal and externals. And internals are for the staff, for the people working in Casa Batlló, as for instance, reduce waste through prevention, reduction, and recycling and reuse, measuring what is our consumption of water, of paper, of ink, and other materials, and improving separation of garbage and waste. And for external, all the people, when they used to buy their tickets, we send them an email for confirmation with some recommendations. And we improve this part, adding recommendations of other touristic points of Barcelona in order to decentralize the agglomerations. Now we are living the under tourism period, so we have no agglomerations anymore. But also we used to include recommendation of restaurants, local restaurants, not so far from Casa Batlló, that emphasize the local Mediterranean cuisine, which is another intangible heritage, even in the intangible heritage list. And also to encourage physical activity and the use of public transport. We cannot say, do not use flights coming from China. Of course, they will use flights for coming to China. But if they are in the city of Barcelona, we encourage them to do physical activity and using the public transportation. And the last slides are about how we tackled climate change during the lockdown. As probably you know, Casa Batlló is in Barcelona, so we are part of the Catalan environment, Catalan culture, and the most important celebration is the Day of St. George on the 23rd of April. So we encourage people to decorate their balconies with roses because we were not able to do that in Casa Batlló. So we encourage them to invent them, to invent and reuse local materials, waste actually, to decorate their balconies. And the response was amazing. This year we were not able to decorate the facade, but you did it. So with this message, we did, it's just a snapshot of the thousands of people who engage with this action and who celebrate St. George in a different way during the lockdown. And I think it's an inspiring action that we were able to do with the local people, most of them, because it's a Catalan tradition, which most of the Catalan people, they follow it. And we are very happy that we were able to reinvent this new tradition that we created in 2016, which was the decoration of the facade. So I hope this presentation inspired you, and we are very happy to share it with you. Thank you very much.
Almacar, thank you for that truly inspirational presentation. I think heritage tourism is so important to our industry, but so many people find it very challenging to define and to action sustainable tourism and to change the way we do things. And I think many aspects of your talk give us inspiration in ways where we can do much better in terms of adding value to what we do, but retaining the value that heritage tourism brings to our economies, our societies, and our communities. So thank you very much for that.
It's a pleasure.
We're running a little bit behind on time. So I think what I'd like to do is to move us on in the program to our roundtable discussion. But before I hand over to Albino, I'd just like to remind everyone who's participating to please join in on the Slido chat. We're having some great comments on the speakers, and people are posting up various resources for the audience. So please do have a look on the Slido. And please ask questions of the speakers you've already heard and the speakers who are going to participate in the round table, because hopefully we'll have some time for some chat and reflection at the end of this next session. So I'd like now to hand over to Albino.
Thank you, Iwan, and thank you so much for the speakers in the keynote for the fantastic and inspiring presentation and remarks. As Iwan said, this leads us into this second session, which is a round table discussion. So this discussion will consider the valuable role that arts, culture, and heritage can play in inspiring action and building resilience to climate change in terms of both physical heritage assets through contributing to a sense of place, community, and shared values. So we are delighted to introduce our three panel speakers. The first one, Zaid Minty, is a cultural management professional and researcher with South African and Asian experience in urban cultural policy initiatives and strategy. As a manager of the City of Cape Town Arts and Culture Department, he penned the municipality cultural policy. He also led the city's successful bid for World Design Capital of 2014. His nonprofit Creative City South is a platform for furthering the mobilization of culture for sustainable, inclusive, and generative cities in the global South. He's also a research associate at University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, Cultural Policy and Management Department. So welcome, Zaid. Our second speaker, Claire Maguire, is a policy and research officer at the International Federation of Library Association and Institutions, IFLA. Her work focuses on policy and advocacy for the preservation and access to documentary heritage and the role of libraries in ensuring the right to participate in cultural life. She has a master's degree in World Heritage Studies and a background in communication and awareness raising for cultural heritage. Welcome to you, Claire. And our third speaker, Ayeta Wangusa, is the Executive Director of Culture and Development East Africa, CDEA, a creative think tank in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. CDEA provides cultural and Pan-African thought leadership for creative, social, and scientific innovators to create and innovate through structure, workplace, learning, incubation, research, advocacy, capacity building for social change. This think tank also innovates on how space can be used to enhance sustainable workplace productivity and green community lifestyle. So I would quickly like to invite each one of the panel members to briefly introduce themselves in their areas of work. So I will start with you, Zaid. Please, the floor is yours. You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to this important session. As a cultural manager interested in cities and sustainable development in the global South, these dialogues are very important as they help us as professionals to think collectively about how culture can inspire action and build resilience to a multitude of challenges, green and brown, facing the planet. So in the growing crisis of climate change, memory, heritage, and arts are important ways to make shifts. Arts are especially powerful because of their ability to build empathy, compassion, and awareness. It breaks down barriers that society sets up and would not otherwise be so easily negotiable. Through stories, color, spectacle, and humor, art allows us not just a way to see, but also a way to feel different worlds. So much more can be communicated through a song, graphic novel, photograph, or TikTok video. The challenge forward is getting artists to want to take on what many see as an instrumental role. But the challenges are not the same everywhere. I came across a number of young artists in the Asian context, for example, taking on climate change. And I had a sense that solidarity around the causes were important, but that the challenges were also much more present. In Southern Africa, climate change is less spoken about since it's not experienced as much. Art themes commonly focus on identity, belonging, gender and sexuality, but also power and the unequal distribution thereof. This latter theme makes me believe that the leap to speaking about climate change is possible, but it's not a simple one. In Southern Africa, the challenges of climate change are less prevalent. The real needs are much more prosaic. For young people who make up 37% of the South African population, for example, it's issues such as unequal access to resources, unemployment, crime, peer pressures which prevail. So to connect the themes that impact on disrupting young people's visions for themselves requires a great deal of youth-driven leadership, activism, and creativity. Preaching and instructions from official sources and elders really work. It requires not just having young people being open to listen to the message, but the challenging feat of getting young people to take on the role of messenger, being central to rewriting the message themselves. So first we need young leaders, influencers, pop stars even, shifting from speaking on individualistic issues to help make this leap. Because when they speak, young people listen. Second, for the message to be heard, it's going to have to be in their own language, using their communication forms. And they're both high and low tech approaches. I found very inspiring the Decolonial Project, for example, the Roads Must Fall movement, which has perhaps been an unsettling one for heritage workers, but it's an exciting example showing both that young leaders are present and that creativity can address complexity. In these cases, tangible heritage, often colonial and sculptural, in public space, were creatively hacked through low tech and spectacle. It resulted in multiple messaging, communicating power, privilege, and possibility. And through creative destruction, stroke adaptation, spaces for dialogue about the values that underpin broken systems were opened. Further, they seem to offer much more, much needed solidarity and interconnectedness while it was all happening. It suggests that heritage can be used, maybe not in the way of being cherished as some may want it, but as levers that challenge the multiple entangled threats that impact on our planet. So there is power in possibilities. We must be open and recognize there are bigger issues at stake. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zaid, for shedding light into your experience from Asia and also Southern Africa, and also presenting the challenges and the possibilities of the engagement of artists in climate action. I will now invite Claire. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you to both of our co-hosts for including me today. IFLA is proud to be a founding member of the Climate Heritage Network, as libraries can play a crucial role in inspiring action and building resilience to climate change. One thing that is so inspiring about the Climate Heritage Network is the collaboration across the culture, heritage, and arts sectors. And I'm excited to have the opportunity to include documentary cultural heritage in this movement and speak both to the impact that this heritage can have on climate action, as well as the role that libraries themselves play. Our documentary heritage, books, manuscripts, maps, archival photographs, records of oral traditions, to name a few examples, give a glimpse into the way that other people see and navigate the world. These items, whether they were intended to or not, provide testament to the ways of life that can assist in climate change adaptation, sharing data and enhancing our understanding of tangible and intangible heritage. Libraries can provide records of traditional knowledge, such as building techniques that are better suited to withstand extreme weather, for example. The knowledge preserved in memory institutions like libraries is a part of a living heritage and culture for many people. In short, protecting this heritage is not just an end in itself, but is also vital to wider climate action. For example, the only library on Tuvalu holds irreplaceable historical documents, as well as weather and tide records that are critical tools for climate research. It sits 20 meters from the shore and is threatened by sea level rise. As the librarian told the UN Special Rapporteur for Cultural Rights, Ms. Karima Benoon, during her recent mission to the islands, if we are not here anymore, what will happen to our culture? Beyond documentary heritage, libraries are spaces where community is created and where information is shared. In ordinary times, if such a thing exists, they are free of charge, welcoming to all people, and center on the mission of providing access to information and lifelong learning. Libraries can be both a community anchor and a leader for resilience building. But they are also vital in times of emergency. We see many examples of libraries acting as places of refuge and secondary emergency service providers following disasters like floods and hurricanes. People go there seeking resources, essential services, and support of their community. Libraries can also lead by example, helping people address climate change and sustainability not as abstract concepts, but rather as real factors in their community's health and well-being. In closing, both the information that library collections hold, as well as the connections they facilitate, enhance the impact that art, culture, and heritage can have on climate action. They can be a catalyst for community participation in climate heritage action. Libraries at all levels and the documentary heritage that they hold should be viewed as assets in connecting people to the past and to one another, building resilience and inspiring action.
Thank you so much, Claire, for your very inspiring remarks and also reminding us of the vulnerability of the documentary heritage to climate and also shedding light into very interesting ideas. I would now like to call our third speaker, Ayeta Wanguze. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Climate Heritage Network for inviting me to share my views. My thoughts will be really focused on my work as Culture and Development East Africa, highlight what culture is, how cultural resources can be exploited to address climate change, share a case on how cultural expressions can inspire action, and also share how creative hubs in cities as knowledge brokers can play a role in climate justice and equitable transitions. So the link between, the arts and climate action, we see it in form of artists as communicators, while for the creative hubs in cities, we see them as knowledge brokers around issues of climate change and climate actions. With relation to culture, we look at the African backdrop, African culture as the backdrop in which we have conversations about climate action. And we look at, how traditional African communities have always situated, culture as that unifier, which is in sync with the environment. And when we talk about heritage, it is, that opportunity to tap into our traditional knowledge and address climate action, for example, in reference to our traditional native trees and how they can contribute to, healing, in healing and also architectural design. You see the cities are all, filling up with exotic architectural designs. And the idea of heritage is to go back into those spaces and tap into that. I just wanted to share an example of a case in Tanzania, a project we are doing around the coast of Tanzania, because what is happening is that around 90% of the original vegetation has been lost because of, the infiltration of exotic species of plants, and this at times it kills the natural species, and this has also contributed to climate change. And on the other hand, we also found that most city dwellers don't even realize that the trees in their compounds are actually exotic species. Some of them are from India, and they think that they are natural ones. So what we engaged in was a campaign to actually show the city residents that what is native and what is not native. And the idea was to inspire them to take action when they are buying native plants. Plants to, for their landscaping purposes, to take action in selecting what is native and not what is exotic, because it has an impact on. Also, in relation to the creative hubs as knowledge brokers, my organization has a hub that we call Eco Sana Hub. In Swahili, the word Sana means the arts. So eco is of course around environment. And what we'd like to do is actually to influence whoever comes into our hub to begin adopting a sustainable lifestyle. For example, the materials, the furniture in our office, the tables and the chairs, some of the chairs are made from, recycled materials, for example, from old dhows, which are used in the Indian Ocean. When they get old, we repurpose them into furniture. In our restaurant, we have glasses that are made out of old wine bottles. Even indoors, we try to incorporate plants that can also suck out the carbon dioxide. In terms of drinking water, we are also trying to include what we call the ceramic water filtration technology, rather than buying dispenser water. So the ceramic combines the African traditional pot technology with scientific knowledge to create safe water that doesn't require one boiling water all the time, which has an impact on climate change. In terms of energy, we're in discussions to moving towards using more of solar energy rather than electricity, which is many times, unsustainable. It's on and off. Just before this meeting, it actually went off. So I'm hoping before I end this conversation, it will still be on. And then in terms of knowledge, we also train, artists on how they can, turn waste into, functional products, and also knowledge, around, saving native plants in the city. Yeah. So with that, I can say that's how I see the connection on the role of the artists and creative hubs in playing a role in climate action within cities and within the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ayata, for giving those concrete examples and testimonies of the amazing work that your organization is doing, and bring some examples from East Africa. I know that we a little bit pressed on time, but would want to open for a bit of a discussion. Maybe we could look into first one of the common themes when we ask to use one phrase or word on how do we think that arts, culture, and heritage can support the race to zero. And the most common concepts in our slide were engagement, cooperation, sustainable tourism. And I wonder if you would want, any of you would want to actually shed some light very briefly in 1 minute. What is your take on those, and what are your views on how do we actually, what is critical on the arts supporting race to zero? Yes, Claire.
I think I'd like to pick up on the word engagement. And while I was thinking about that question, my one word that I could come up with was connection. And I think those are really related, where to be really engaged with something, you need to forge that connection. And these are complex global issues that we can't do ourselves. So I think the word connection has a lot of layers to it, where a tenet of effective communication and effective engagement is making that connection. And that is something that the arts and heritage and culture really, more than technology in a way, can effectively do. So I think finding a way, our challenge is finding a way to valorize that role and make it recognizable that that is an essential part of creating engagement between all the different sectors working in climate action, and also between people and the changes that they may need to go through. So I think, yeah, the word engagement and connection is really at the heart of what we're getting at.
Thanks, Claire. Anyone would want to follow up on this? Yes, Zaid?
So yes, and I agree with Claire. You know, I think the kind of engagement between people, and I think the wonderful opportunities that libraries and creative hubs provide, getting people together, is really amazing. And I was looking at some of the kind of examples that have been working in the South African context, and one of them is really getting young people together to make things about the issues. So water in South Africa, in Cape Town, became a big issue. So getting young people to make artifacts, or to create stories or songs, or some kind of spoken word, was very powerful. So it got young people talking amongst themselves about what the issues were and how it impacted on their lives. So I think that's the kind of opportunities that spaces and art making creates, especially for young people.
Thank you. A very interesting example. Maybe to you, and I would like just to expand a little bit and ask you how, from the examples in East Africa, how do you see the different organizations being able to harness the full potential of arts and culture in our race to zero?
I think it's about publicity, about their role in the climate action agenda, but also providing a network, around East Africa, getting more artists on board around this issue. For example, especially in cities, when you look at most of our cities, the architectural design of homes, of houses, is not climate friendly. It's an imitation of another culture, and that has an impact on, energy use, or, importing furniture from China that's already, increasing the carbon levels. You already talk about travel. So it's about influence, collaborations also with sectors like the architectural foundations to begin understanding, how artists can play a role in visual artists, for example, in the design, architectural designers understanding, the whole idea of climate change. So if we do not have this conversation, even with city authorities, we need to have some kind of creative city planning to bring all actors on board to understand the climate agenda rather than working in silos. So I think that it's very important, to have participatory planning and also visioning what can the city look like, let's say in 10 years' time, if we changed our architectural design, if we incorporated our traditional heritage within our city plans, it would make so much of a difference if we worked that way, rather than working in silos. Yeah.
Very interesting indeed. I was just wondering if we sort of go across your different work experience, how do we, in your opinion, how do we actually make use of the arts and culture in ensuring this climate justice and also supporting that equitable transition in terms of, Ayada was talking in terms of urban planning and setting, but also if you are looking into documentary heritage and access to this, how do we think that we can actually harness this potential and ensure this transition?
Well, I think that's the million-dollar question. But I think we need to have an open mind of what what technology can be, that it doesn't have to be something that's altogether new. I think one thing we can learn from the heritage sector, which is more my background than the arts, is that people have lived for so long before industrial revolution, and there's a lot of knowledge that we can find there, and that we to find a way to connect that to people's lives today is really valuable in terms of heritage, but also in terms of these community spaces that we're talking about. We need, in order to have a just transition, we need to have a participatory transition and to build informed and participatory societies. And doing that, we need to be at the community level. So we're really working at all levels here, aren't we? Because one of the major barriers we're facing is underestimation and misunderstanding of our sectors and the power that our sectors can have. And that needs to be done really at the top level. But we also need to be active at the local level and at the individual and at the community level of involvement and conversation. And I think our sectors can play a big role there. And we somehow need to advocate for that role first with the communities that we're involved in, and then bringing that all the way up to the top level to show that this is an essential part of climate action. And as was said, we can't be in a silo. It has to be included in a broader network of action.
Thank you. Anyone would want to pick up on this point?
So I do think Claire is correct about the indigenous knowledge side, and I think that's quite a big factor in definitely in the Southern African context and Sub-Saharan African context, that people need to be empowered in terms of their own sense of heritage and being. And that's going to be the real challenge. And I think that's why, for me, it's important for leaders to be kind of supported, to find that kind of knowledge, to engage them into dialogues about the issues that they might not be thinking about. I mean, to give the example in the South African context, the cultural policy landscape is really heavily focused on creative industries, and economic growth. And I think that's quite challenging. To try and then have a discussion around the social and the cultural implications. So I think it's important that we have different kinds of dialogues with leaders at every level that we can at this stage in time, and really bring the issues to fore and help them to think about it in relationship to the issues that they're dealing with currently.
Thanks. And Ayanda, you were mentioning, you were giving some of the examples on, for instance, how the ideas on how to live sustainably. Would you just expand a little bit on the role of arts, culture, and heritage in this route to net zero and sustainable practices? I mean, probably it will be actually good to share some of those examples from your part of the world.
Me?
Yes.
Did you say? Yeah. Yes. Yes. I strongly believe that the role of a creative hub is to influence not just the people who come to our hub for activities, but even the ones that work here. So because when you influence the way they work, in terms of how the workspace is designed, then they will have an influence on their community. So I believe that the role of the hub, the creative hub, is to actually influence the way communities live, to tell the story of how we can move into that direction. And what are the key issues what are the key themes that we feel, can actually be, achieved within a particular lifestyle? When we talk about energy, most people use charcoal in their homes, and that has an impact on the green cover in rural communities or even in urban settings. So what is the alternative? The conversation should be around alternatives. What is the cost of gas? That is a policy issue. How do you get people to afford gas rather than cut down trees? What kind of trees need to be actually planted? So these conversations that happen within the hubs and also happen on social media are what we feel can be, adopted by the people that we are trying to influence. Because the primary target, of course, is those who come to the hub, but the second one are those that we get to via media. When it comes to water, so energy is one of them. The other one is also energy, but also materials, and that is, for example, one of the plans we have in the making is to build a creative village that will actually influence the way people build. How do you turn, plastic into a building material? And when people come to your hub and see that you're using plastic as paving material, this is something they can incorporate into their own building projects. So we see the hub as an influencer in terms of personal lives, not just for a place where you come to have entertainment, but you see things that can happen that then you can incorporate them in your life. Then, communally, then we'll be taking everyone towards the road to achieve zero. That's my take on this.
Thank you so much. I mean, there is, unfortunately, we don't have that much time, but I would like to really thank you for bringing all these key issues and your reflections on meaningful participation, dialogue, engagement, collaboration, and all those critical areas for reflection and action that will actually help us on our bringing arts, culture, and heritage and supporting the race to zero. So I would like to thank you, the three of you, for this very inspiring contribution and insightful thoughts into the topic. I'll like now to pass over to you, Iwan, to take us to the last section.
Thank you, Albino. I so wish we had more time, but unfortunately, sadly, we're coming towards the end of our dialogue. And to provide us with a closing cultural performance, I'd like to introduce Roseanne Watt. Roseanne is a poet, a filmmaker, a musician from the Shetland Isles off the north of Scotland. She's a celebrated and award-winning poet, and her first poetry collection, Moder Die, was published in 2019. Roseanne has recently completed a PhD at the University of Stirling, which involved the creation of a portfolio of film poems and film portraits investigating the cultural memory of her home islands. Roseanne is going to say a few words, and then I think is going to show us one of her film videos. Roseanne, over to you.
So that's lovely. Thank you so much for that introduction, and just for an urgent, thoughtful morning around these dialogues. I'm honoured to be participating and finishing off the session. I'm joining you from a very rainy Shetland. I actually live on the northmost island, which is called Unst, and the ideas which have been discussed today, I feel, are very resonant with the film that I'm going to show, especially in terms of this idea of the crisis of memory and imagination and power structures. The film is called Kishy Wife, which is a kind of a figure in Shetland's cultural heritage of a woman carrying peats on her back in a basket, peats being fuel for burning. And the film is the spoken aspect of the film is in the local language, which is called Shetland, and with English text on screen. And the Shetland language is an influence that has a substratum of an extinct language beneath it called Norn. And the loss of Norn meant that there was no, Norn was a language which was oral history, and it was never written down. And so this meant that none of the stories in Norn ever got passed on to modern Shetlanders who speak the modern language. So the film is kind of about trying to return to a sense of those stories, to be gifted a story is to, as we have discussed, to be given a relationship with the land back. So this is Kishy Wife. I'll let you play it now. Thank you.
Though some say otherwise, she was the first that went to fetch the fire for the hills. Shuggings ut dicks. Trow land o unken trees. hushy ba, a wind gings their bonds. She lost the sound and gings on. Some say otherwise, but she was the first. Of course she was. None else could bear a load like that, slung over her back like a bairn. Ah, that brilliant bassin weight.
Roseanne, thank you so much. That was just so moving. Fabulous. We're out of time, sadly. And I think I only have time to close the event, and I'd like Albino to join me. I have found it inspirational this morning. I'd like to thank all the contributors, the speakers, our two cultural performances, and the audience for the superb chat, and looking at some of the comments coming in, noting the inspiring examples and practitioners. We've heard a lot of talk about heritage as a lever for change, a catalyst for climate action, the power of arts to connect people together, both to their pasts and to their futures. And I think particularly as arts, culture and heritage, as communicators and knowledge brokers. And for me, I think the power of this is really important. And also just to acknowledge our keynote speakers, Nigel Topping and Princess Dana, for particularly highlighting and underscoring that role. And I think setting a challenge for us. We need more. We need to hear more from arts and culture and heritage to play our part in the global challenge that's in front of us. So that's all from me. Thank you very much. I'll just hand over to Albino to close the event.
Thank you, Iwan, and I will just absolutely concur with Iwan's kind and words. And thank you all the speakers, the keynote. We are really, really privileged to have you all and share this great moment and this reflection, which we hope to continue in the different platforms, but also to the different networks that we engage with. We remind that we are also officially launching the CVI project today, which is one of the great achievements of the Climate Heritage Network. And we are also very grateful to all partners and contributions. So thank you so much. And we hope to see some of you in the regional forums tomorrow and also later today. Thank you so much, and have a great day or evening, depending on where you are. Thanks.